Hello and welcome to our program. On the 24th of January, India celebrates the National Girl Child Day. We begin with a very special thought just for today. When she takes birth, life comes alive. When she walks the earth, it's springtime. When she gets wings, she makes a better world. When we love nature, we cherish our girls. Welcome back. We're very privileged to have in the studio with us the UNICEF India representative, Dr. Yasmin Ali Haque. Please join me in welcoming her. Dr. Haque, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, and quite a privilege to be here.
A pleasure to have you here, ma'am. Yasmin, when we talk about children, that's your area of passion, and you have engaged for so many years working around the world and working in this particular sector. So before we move on to the girl child, just a sense of how are children placed as a very sensitive sector across the world?
And it's so important that we focus on that. Somehow, till you have that, you become an adult, your view is seen as important, that you have the agency, you can cast your vote, you're seen as someone who needs to listen, learn. And I'm sure many of us, when in our childhood, that was the norm we had as children. But it's become clear that children, even from when they're in their mother's womb, they're learning, they're listening, they're taking on behaviors.
Right.
It's how the mom is treated, it's how the family celebrates or not when the child is born. It's how the family engages with a newborn who doesn't have the language skills, who is not walking and talking, who demands attention through cry. But the stimulation a child receives at that age, the type of love and nourishment that the child gets makes a difference for when the child is an adult. So it's so important that we take cognizance of the fact that from the very moment of conception, the child is learning and growing and thriving. And unless we invest in that as a family, as a community, as a society, as a nation, we're losing out on our so important resource of capital.
Right. So what really happens, because when kids are born, I think there are celebrations in most places, most countries, the child is greeted and the child then becomes a priority for all parents.
Mm-hmm.
You work for them, you want to give them education, you want to give them food. And then this sector by itself tends to get marginalized by virtue of not being in a decision-making capacity.
Exactly.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we get young people and children particularly to have a voice enough to say that, you need to invest in us right now?
And that's so important in terms of the mindset. How do we view children? How do we view childhood?
Okay.
And for many of us, our children have had the luxury of a childhood that has seen them going to school, going up to the age of 18, not being burdened by family responsibilities before that. But for many children, that's not the case. For majority of children around the world, that's not the case. Because they have to take on a burden of the family's income, a burden of the family responsibility from an early age.
Right.
Child marriage, whether it's a girl or a boy, these are children getting married while they're still children. And even if as an adult, it's not that suddenly at 18 you switch and you have a voice and you don't.
Right.
But unless you have the space when you're growing up, unless you are able to express your view, unless you have the space that builds your confidence and doesn't discriminate against you, you're not going to be a confident adult or adolescent. And that's where, especially for adolescents, even though the definition of a child is up to the age of 18, the moment we turn 13 or 14, you're expected to be more responsible. take on greater accountability,
Right.
but then where is that transition time, and do we give ourselves that time for transition?
I know, and the challenge is that physically also you're growing, so your body suddenly grows up and you start looking like a young lady or a young man. But actually, a lot of childhood is still with you. You're still learning, and you have yet to make the transition.
Right. And in that transition, the vulnerabilities that girls and boys face in that transition, if it's not accompanied by in a manner which nurtures them, that is respectful of them, that brings that helps them inculcate behavior that is responsible and what would be expected of a citizen, we can't expect them to then suddenly switch over.
Absolutely.
So it's that nurturing along the way that is so important for children becoming adolescents and then adults.
Right, and when we talk of investment and we talk of financial investment, you can't have a bad investment and then expect it to give you dividends later. So every
Or
child,
no investment.
or no investment, actually, that's true, because every child, and then you want to have nation building. You want them to get a sense of being contributing to a society as citizens, and how much do we invest in them?
And it's so important. In some of my work, we've looked at, say, the whole issue of violence, gender-based violence. And when we have talked to adolescent girls and adolescent boys, it was really striking that adolescent boys especially, they were at a dilemma, because morally and ethically they know that violence against girls or violence against women is not right. But on the other hand, they see it happening in their families, in their societies.
Okay.
So what do I choose? Is it what society expects of me? Is it the norms that society has set for me? Or can I be that caring young boy, young man who can change the norm of what's out there?
Right. And I think this really throws into focus the fact that when we want to talk of working with the girl child and ensuring that she is not marginalized or she is not victimized, I think working with the male child is equally important.
Absolutely, and that's key to it. That we're not looking at we should value the girl more than valuing the boy. What we're saying, we need to value children for what they are.
True. Very true.
And the sad fact is the girl child is not as valued as a boy child. She is not equal to her peer. And we see it in so many spheres. Even if, say, when we look at the sex ratio in India, for every 1,000 boys, in Haryana there are 863 girls. But there's also, on the other hand, in other states, in Chhattisgarh, we see that that number is over 980. So what is it that causes this difference in the value of a girl and a boy? The celebration of the birth of a child, just the fact that a child is born normal, healthy, without any form of trauma to the mother, to the child, is such an important event.
Right. It's
it's
life-giving
sex,
completely.
Absolutely. But the sex of the girl or the boy becomes an issue of whether it is celebrated or not.
Right.
And that's where, like you talked about the mindset, that's where the whole change is. Do we value them? And it goes back to, it's a cycle. Do we value girls? Are they an asset or are they a burden? Do we see them as our old age pension as a parent, the person who will look after the family? Or is the whole dependency linked to the identity of your son?
Right.
And how we look at these notions of society, the roles that we place on girls and boys and men and women, how patriarchy features in it is so important for us to really examine it in our own households, in our communities, in whatever work we're doing, whatever study we're doing, and try and bring it back to the fact that these are human lives.
So true. तो जो माता पिता का रोल होता है, जो पेरेंट्स का रोल होता है vis-a-vis the rest of society, can we differentiate between the two?
we shouldn't even try to, in a way. Now, our biological functions are different for the father and the mother. But when it comes to the child rearing and caring, I'll give you an example. मैं बिहार में एक गांव में घर में गई थी और वहाँ आशा और आंगनवाड़ी वर्कर वो बच्चे को देखने गए थे घर में. माँ दिखा रही थी, दादी दिखा रही थी, वो थे. बच्चे के पिताजी भी थे, लेकिन वो ज़रा दूर बैठे रहे थे. तो मैंने उनको पूछा, और बच्ची एक महीने की होगी. मैंने उनको पूछा, आपने बच्ची को गोद में लिया है? मैं ले सकता हूँ. आप बच्ची को गाना सुनाते हैं? वो तो नहीं समझेगी. So you can see from this that mindset and the role also for women, for mother-in-laws, for mothers to draw in our husbands and our grandfathers,
right,
to play that role,
right,
to hold the baby, to sing to the baby, to smile at the baby, and that bonding that happens.
So just not to be a provider, but to be a nurturer also.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. And that's where it's important that we don't see it as this is the male role and this is the female role. For a child, we're parents, we're grandparents, we're brothers, sisters, and we all have a role. You know, it's so well understood that to bring up a child, you need a village, you need a community.
So true. That's absolutely right. And in fact, I think with the current changing scenario of families becoming more nuclear, economic demands increasing, you need two incomes to, actually run, particularly an urban household. I think all stereotypes and gender equations changing.
Absolutely.
I think boys, by actually all original stereotype notions and myths about what a boy means being challenged, are also vulnerable because they don't know what is being challenged and where to be.
Exactly.
So I think this vulnerability, when societal churn and change is happening, affects children as a whole.
Absolutely. And that's where the role of employers, of state organization comes in, that how are we nurturing that parenting role? Not just for the mother is seen as a natural caretaker, and the mother will have the maternity leave, and the mother will have, and that's really important, and we need to continue with that. But the acknowledging that there is the role of the father too, that there is the space for working mothers or working parents to have some form of childcare. And even in rural areas, we've seen examples where it's worked well, where communities run creches.
Okay.
Even in an agricultural society, both the parents will have to be engaged in activity.
Outdoor activity, yeah.
And so what happens to the baby? Maybe the grandmother or grandfather are not around. So that's where there are examples where this women's self-help groups have organized themselves so that by rotation, they provide a creche facility. That today I'm going to be the parent for all the children whose parents are going to work.
Right.
And that's where it's again, it's that notion and that belief that investing your time, your money, your energy in children was to the benefit of the whole community.
Right. So when the rules of economic engagement change, and that's also the beginning for mindsets to change, because sometimes necessity makes you move out of your comfort zones and challenge existing norms. So what is a girl's role? A girl is going, like Paraya Dhan, is going to get married and go away. But no, a girl can equally be supportive of her family.
Absolutely.
She gets married, but she's still a daughter. So she's still, so to say, like a caregiver, a potential caregiver in your old age. I think with this change happening, economics also plays a huge role because that's so closely linked.
And policies, inheritance laws. Many times in many countries I've heard the argument that she'll get married, she will have a share of the property from her husband's side. So she doesn't need property from her father's side. But if you see her as an agent not linked to the identity of a father, husband, son, it does require that she in her own right can also hold the property. So that value that we place on ultimately the woman and her role in contributing to society starts from when she's a child.
Right.
Do I invest my money if she's sick? Or if I have limited resources and I have a boy and a girl, where am I making choices? Who goes to school? Who stays at home?
Right.
And how the state can support families who are having to make this difficult choice, because for some families it is a difficult choice. But to have that support, that you will be supported in sending your children to school. All children everywhere, and especially those who are likely to be left out.
Right. And in fact, that's where numbers give us a very interesting indication that in all countries across, it's known that the female girl child mortality rates are lower, because I think constitutionally and otherwise, girls survive tougher circumstances, even as babies. But the two countries are bucking this trend, and India and China, where the populations are really going, really crossing all marks. But here, the female child mortality is very high. And that could be linked to, as you said, are you making right medical choices? How long are you waiting to take a sick girl to hospital?
Absolutely. And who do you take her to? Do you take her to the local faith healer, or do you take her to the sick newborn care unit? And that's another information that, the importance of having sex disaggregated data. So children being admitted in a hospital, in a newborn care unit, are they boy, girl?
Right.
And are we looking at the data? And the data tells us that in such institutions around India, 40% of admissions are girls only. So 60% admissions are boys, 40% admissions are girls.
Right.
Which means that many of the girls who could have been there are not there. So it's not to say that we want less boys to come in. We're saying we need the numbers to come up for both boys and girls,
right.
But there's a greater catch-up for the girl child to be there. But it's possible. In a number of states and in recently published data, it has been possible to show that there is better care seeking of girls, that the mortality rate, the excess mortality for girls was 17% in NFHS 3, now it's 11%. So it is possible to make a change.
Right.
It's not determined biologically. And that's the point you were making, that to bring that change, it's a matter of having the policies, the instruments, the monitoring, and the mindset change. So for us not to sit back and say, oh, this is not going to change.
Right.
It does. It's happening here, and it has to happen more.
Right. And the attitude of, oh, it's not going to change is also a mindset.
Absolutely.
So that by itself needs to change for any movement and traction to happen. So when, when you look across the world, and we know that children need special care, what do you think are the latest movements within India? Have you seen a change as to how we're looking at children, girl child also included, in terms of actually ensuring that we invest better and better in them?
It's really exciting times with the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, with the focus on the National Nutrition Mission, with the focus on Swachh Bharat, with the focus on reducing child marriage. There are so many initiatives ongoing that will contribute to this improvement in the situation of children. The challenge for us always is, how do we make sure that the messaging is coherent, that we're not giving opposing messaging? How do we look at where the disparities are and make greater investments in those places? How do we reach beyond our comfort zone, like you said, to say, all right, what else needs to happen? Are we examining our strategies to say, are we reaching all the groups that need to be reached? We have numbers of schemes that are in place for children to promote the delivery, that women go and deliver in health centers, that there is wage compensation if they need to take their children to a sick and newborn care unit. Are these schemes making a difference? So it's really for us to challenge ourselves to see, what else? Is this enough? do we need to reorganize? You know, what's next? The power of social media and the power of communication in a country like India, where the penetration of the mobile phone, where millions of people will be watching this program. Are we making best use of this forum? What else can we do? The other part I feel is we could be doing much more is listening to the young people. You know, we talk about it that they do have viewpoints. They do have, they are agents of change. 10 साल उम्र की एक लड़की मुझे बोल रही थी, उसकी सहेली स्कूल नहीं आई, 3 दिन स्कूल नहीं आई, तो वो उनके घर गई, and she found out that her marriage is being organized. तो उसने कहा ये क्या कर रहे हैं? नहीं, उसके डैडी ने ठीक किया है. So she went off to the daddy and said, आप क्यों कर रहे? And she managed to stop that wedding. So I said to her, आप जब उनके पिताजी के पास गए, उन्होंने डांटा नहीं आपको जी? What is it to you? मेरे घर में क्या हो रहा है? And she said, हाँ बोला था. मैंने कहा कि it's not just about your house. ये हमारे नेशन की बात है. अगर 10-12 वर्ष उम्र में बेटी की शादी हो जाए.
Wow, lovely.
And they're the ones who are taking a risk, who are making a change.
Right.
And I think we need to bring that more into focus.
How are we understanding young people? And we only understand when we listen. And so again, there is this myth blasting that kids are given a future. Kids have very little role in constructing their future. We need to help them.
Absolutely.
I think in that garb of helping them, we start taking their decisions. And they are very, very alive, very aware, and they want change.
Absolutely. They want change. And,
Right.
and even in the digital space, the fact that in schools, children's clubs have come together and they act as peer groups on how they protect themselves from abuse and exploitation over the internet.
Okay.
That's
right.
another big threat that children face.
Right.
So it's really looking at every generation has a new level or a new type of threat that they face.
Right.
But how can we involve them in the solutions? How can we learn from the solutions they have found and take it to scale to connect the dots with the other groups?
So true, because very often the people who are involved in policy and even implementation have no real sense of the issue or the problem, because times have changed. Every 4 years there's a new generation. So how we see generations evolving, how we see technology, the rate and pace of change is so fast that we need these agents of change to feed into the solutions.
Absolutely.
Right. What are some regional areas and some particular parts of the country you feel are very alive and very aware because you've traveled across? So do you think we have pockets of excellence in terms of how we see our children and making them more, I think, stronger citizens?
I think children are buzzing everywhere.
Okay.
It's a matter of us taking cognizance of it, whether it's in a rural school in Jharkhand, which takes 3 hours to get to, or whether it's a school in Delhi. Kids are out there, they're making a difference. What we need for them to add to that buzz is really to look at, are we robbing them of their potential in terms of their nutrition? And investing in those early years, investing in the proper care of a child as a baby, as an infant, proper food and feeding for the baby, looking at the nutrition, catching when their malnutrition signs are showing, and reversing that before the age of 3, because at the age of 3, by that time the damage is done. We've lost the potential. The malnutrition damage that is done by the age of 3 is irreversible. So it's damage not just in the physical stunting of a child, but also the intellectual capacity is limited.
Right.
And that's where if we really want to see an even greater buzz, malnutrition is a problem which is in all areas.
Right. So आप कह रहे हैं कि जब से बच्चा गर्भ धारण करता है और जब तक वो 3 साल तक होता है, तो तो ये सबसे क्रिटिकल ईयर्स होते हैं क्योंकि इसमें बच्चा बोलता भी कम है और आई थिंक पेरेंट्स ही लीड रोल लेते हैं, मगर इस वक्त में अगर उसको अच्छा खाना मिले तो ये उसको उम्र भर के लिए सपोर्ट करता है।
Absolutely.
और हम ये बोलें कि नहीं बच्चा 10-11 साल का होगा उसकी न्यूट्रिशन बढ़ेगी, आई थिंक वो क्रिटिकल ईयर्स आप बोल रहे हैं वो 0 से 3 तक।
0 से 3 तक। सो व्हाटएवर उस वक्त वेदर माँ का दूध मिलता है बच्चों को, 6 महीने के बाद क्या खिलाना होता है, इज इट जस्ट अ बिस्किट or do you prepare the dal, chal and vegetable? Do you grow the kitchen garden vegetable and feed the child? दिन में 3-4 बार खाना मिलता है कि नहीं? Along with that, the love, attention and stimulation.
Right. So इसमें जो दायित्व जो रोल बनता है माता का और पिता का, और कभी-कभी माएँ ये भी बोलती हैं कि और जब दे आर एक्सपेक्टिंग, गर्भ धारण किया हुआ है, दे आर प्रेग्नेंट, कि आई कैन डू विद लेस फूड, आई नीड टू फीड माई 14-year-olds or 16, बट एक्चुअली शी इज डिनाइंग जो वो बच्चा जो बेबी इन द वूम, शी इज डिनाइंग उसको न्यूट्रिशन नहीं मिल रहा।
बिल्कुल।
और ये फिर ये समय वापस नहीं आ सकता, इसको आप बाद में मेकअप नहीं कर सकते। वो क्रिटिकलिटी
बहुत क्रिटिकल है और इसलिए इन्वेस्टिंग इन दैट टाइम ये बहुत ही ज़रूरी है।
इसी के लिए कम्युनिटी प्रेशर भी आता है, पिता का रोल बनता है टू इंश्योर कि माँ खाए, अच्छा खाए। आई थिंक सास ससुर का रोल बनता है, जो जॉइंट फैमिलीज होती हैं पेरेंट्स का रोल बनता है टू इंश्योर कि न्यूट्रिशन अच्छा रहे।
एब्सोल्युटली
राइट।
एब्सोल्युटली।
अभी एक छोटे से ब्रेक के लिए जाएंगे। व्हेन वी कम बैक फ्रॉम द ब्रेक, डॉक्टर यास्मीन, वी विल वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम यू दैट व्हाट आर सम इनिशिएटिव्स that UNICEF is taking in wanting to actually safeguard this little cradle of childhood so that we have stronger and healthier and happier adults coming out of the cradle. But right now we take a short break. Stay with us.
मैं जरा माताओं से पूछ रहा हूं, अगर बेटी पैदा नहीं होगी तो बहू कहां से लाओगे? अगर बहू पढ़ी लिखी चाहती है तो बेटी को भी पढ़ाना ये हमारी जिम्मेवारी बनती है।
इस सोच को आगे आगे बढ़ाओ, हर घर में खुशहाली लाओ, देश को आगे लेकर जाओ, बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ।
Welcome back. Before we resume our conversation with Dr. Yasmin Ali Haque, I think it's a morning program. Mornings are great times to at least give a thought and a look to what fitness means. Let's take a look. So just a physical fitness question, since we just saw this little capsule. You travel a lot.
I do.
I think, and you go to interior areas and so with this schedule, what is your fitness mantra?
My fitness mantra is really to try and watch what I eat.
Okay.
I have a dog, so I walk my dog morning, evening, at least 2 times a day, more on the weekend. And for me, fitness also, it's about a state of mind, and I know it's
you have such equanimity about you. You know, how do you keep that?
It's you know what energizes me? It's going and meeting people, and seeing what they're doing against such odds. Seeing the sparkle in the eyes of the young kids, and you know they're waving and going ram ram, and you know the Meena Raju Munch young people that I meet,
Right.
you know, you can't but absorb that and be energized by it.
Right. So what's so lovely is that when you see kids as a blessing, and the fact that you can see them and feel happy as a blessing.
Absolutely.
And I think then there's no space for anything but gratitude.
Totally, totally.
Right. So what really is UNICEF doing in India in these areas?
So Gauraji, UNICEF is really a privileged partner here in India, a partner of the government, a partner of many institutions, of civil society organizations, and our focus is to work with everyone to bring to the community, to the family, a situation that helps nurture that child. Okay. How do we do it? We're involved in the various programs that affect the life of children. We've been talking about the health aspects a lot. So in the health program, nutrition, and importantly, education. So education, though it's the formal side that starts, when you're 6 years old and you're going to this elementary school, but it starts before that. And for us, it's really important to look at the whole early childhood part of that education. We're very fortunate here in India. We have the Anganwadi set up.
Right.
And the Anganwadi workers who are amazing women, who are really, looking at the nutrition, the stimulation of children, and how to keep them active and learn poems with them and songs and dancing. And then, of course, the 0 to 3, from the important period that we were just talking about. And that's where our working with the various Anganwadi workers, Ashas, A&Ms, the women's self-help groups, with the Panchayati Raj members, with all the leadership in the villages and the communities, to take the messages, to promote the behavior that, and also not to just give information, but in a way demonstrate how change is possible, how communities' agency is so important. It's not just about providing a service, it's about how do I take on that service, how do I learn from it, how do I make best use of it for my children. So that takes us into the element. Education, especially education for girls, is a crucial part of our programming. Okay. And we've seen good progress in India. It's amazing how the enrollment rates have gone up. For us, it's okay. The next challenge, enrollment, learning. Are they learning? Are girls and boys learning at the same pace? Do they have the same opportunities to learn? What about secondary school? The transition from elementary to higher secondary, is it happening? Right. For girls, for boys? And having that data, information, analyzing it, and then acting on it is so important. And that's where we try to address where the gaps are. So we have strong partnerships. Just yesterday, the Ministry of Human Resource Development had a day-long meeting on girls' education. Okay. And in that, really critically looking at what are the bottlenecks to a girl completing education. NFHS 4 tells us that the completion rate really, or the average number of schooling years for a girl is 4.4 years and for a boy is 7 years. So it's how do we not just get children into school, but to keep them into school all the way up to higher secondary, and to look at the learning that they have. So what are the barriers to a girl coming to school, seeing as how we're on the subject of the girl child? We're working very closely with education, with the Ministry of Sanitation and Safe Water, with Ministry of Women and Child Development to address those bottlenecks. At times it's just the fact that there isn't a separate toilet for girls that becomes a barrier. So how difficult is it to make sure that one toilet is allocated for the girls?
Right.
Some girls are missing 7 days a month from school. Why? During the menstruation. Because they're embarrassed, because they don't know where they're going to use disposal for their menstrual products. Putting that in place and seeing the Raju and Meena Manch girls who are, they are so proud in going and showing you what's happening. The incinerator is there, how they're teaching all the children about it. So they're things that might seem inconsequential, but they make such a difference to the life of a girl.
Absolutely.
Cycles.
Okay.
We cannot deny the fact that boys and girls have a role in the household to play. They have to, in Africa where water is a big issue, the girls will go out at 5 in the morning, bring the first batch of water to the house, go to school, and then run back from school to go and get the second batch of water. They have to walk miles to collect one pitcher of water. Having a bicycle increases the amount of time they spend in school. Even in India, it's a scheme that is being provided in many states.
Yes.
To address the distance, especially for girls going into lower secondary and upper secondary classes.
Right.
So education is a key area where health, through addressing anemia for young children, boys and girls, comes in.
Which is a big issue.
Which is
also.
a big issue,
Right.
which also robs them of their cognitive and their learning ability.
Right.
So where water, sanitation, health, nutrition, and that aspirational aspect comes through. So where do you learn? Where does aspiration come through? Where does the socialization, where do the leadership skill development come in? And so education is another big part of the work we do.
Right.
Then to address the abuse and exploitation that children face. And that's probably, one of the tougher ones. Because there's no jab, there's no immunization you can give. You can prevent disease. Immunization programs have brought down mortality rates remarkably.
Right.
But we can't give an immunization against violence and abuse and exploitation. That's where it's work making sure that the legal provisions are in place. And here in India, we're very fortunate to have the POCSO Act, the Juvenile Justice Act, where the framework for addressing these crimes when they are committed is there, where it not only talks of one sector, but talks of how the different accountabilities are across the board, including how community-based organizations come in, what sort of support might be given, recognizing the psychosocial needs of such situations. But that's after the fact, after it's happened, working on prevention.
Yeah.
Working on a family and a community where a young girl and a young boy are not exploited because they're children and they're seen as they will not shout loud enough, or the shame is on them, the onus is on them. And that's another key area that we look at. A lot of the issues related to in-country migration, trafficking of children who are brought to bear as either domestic workers or as sexual workers. So these are some of the issues that, again, it's not just one sector, it's across the board, getting the messaging, getting the value, where a community is standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen to my child.
Finally, that's where the strength comes from.
That's where the strength, when we collectively say no, it's not okay.
We don't accept.
We don't accept it, not for my child, not for anybody else's child.
Right. And if I don't accept it for my child, I'm willing to fight for the other child.
Absolutely.
Like this little 10-year-old girl who went and said, it's not about your daughter, it's about the country, it's about all of us.
It's about all of us.
Right.
And that sense of, how can I be a nationalist? It's how I value the well-being of the children of my country.
In terms of decision making and in terms of young people having a say in what life has in store for them, because finally, even with education, what is aspirational? They need opportunities. And I think denial of opportunities is the most fundamental denial to any individual.
Absolutely.
Opportunity to grow because you don't get good nutrition. It's a complete violation. And we talk of fundamental rights, but this is even more fundamental because it takes away your future.
And that's where it's drilling down. So averages can work well also, but then are we drilling down to see, are they all the communities What's the situation of children in the different communities?
Right.
What about children in Dalit communities, children in communities that are more marginalized, children in areas that are less accessible?
Right.
And are we drilling down into that? Are we really looking at where are we not reaching? Celebrate those we are reaching for sure.
Right.
But at the same time,
Shine the light where we're not reaching.
where we're not reaching.
And that's very critical. So in terms of some gaps that you might have seen, which despite all the work that is happening, which we really need to address and address fast?
Two. One is reducing malnutrition, and the second is reducing child marriage. Because the determinants of these two link to all the other things we've talked about.
Okay.
And throughout that, how we look at the girl child, how we value girls and boys equally, and how we value our children and invest in them is important.
At a personal level, Dr. Yasmin, what really inspires you and makes you get up every morning and say, yes, another day?
I guess it's a paradox that on one hand it's celebrating everything that's happened. On the other hand, the knot in your stomach that says, 60% of children, haven't learned to add. Where you know that still there are millions of children who are going to be malnourished. There are, 1 in 4 adolescent is going to be married before the age of 18. And that sense that we have to do something, and no matter what, we have to keep at it, that's what drives me.
And what is something that really gets you down, but you just get up and say, no, I need to carry on?
In all the countries I've been, at times I think it's the injustices that you see. Injustice pulls me down, but energizes me to say, no, it can't happen this way. We have to try.
कोई संदेशा, कोई मैसेज हम सब के लिए, हमारी बेटियों के लिए?
हमारी बेटियों के लिए, बेटियों को प्यार कीजिए, बेटियों को अपॉर्चुनिटी दीजिए, बेटियों को सम्मान दीजिए, और बेटियों को how do I say, don't restrict them.
उड़ने दीजिए.
उड़ने दीजिए, absolutely,
right.
Absolutely.
Dr. Yasmin, thank you so much for coming onto our show. It was a delight just listening to you and learning from you.
It's an honor. So much. Thank you. Thank you, God.
Just as the 24th of January, the National Girl Child Day, as we celebrated, has made history and will go down for posterity, and we will celebrate it every year, it would be nice to know what other events have made history today. Let's take a brief look. On the 24th of January 2011, Pandit Bhimsen Joshi, Hindustani classical vocalist, passed away in Pune. On the 24th of January 1984, Apple Computer Inc. unveiled its revolutionary Macintosh personal computer. And on the 24th of January 1857, the University of Calcutta was founded as the first full-fledged university in South Asia.
मेरी गुड़िया देश की बिटिया हिम्मत रखना, हिम्मत देना, तेरे कदम को चूमेगी दुनिया, तू है बेहतर मानेगी दुनिया।
Thank you for joining us for today's program. We welcome your feedback. Do write into us at aajsavere@ddkdelhi.org.in. And as we shared earlier with you, today we also mark the passing away of Pandit Bhimsen Joshi. Let's listen to a beautiful piece by him. Till next time, Namaskar.
मोरी पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पिया समझागु समरत नाई, साजन नंद मोय देगी गारी, पायलिया झनकार, पायलिया झनकार, पायलिया झनकार, पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पायलिया। पायलिया झनकार, मोरी पायलिया झनकार।
जो भजे हरि को सदा, 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 सोई परम पद पावेगा, सोई परम पद पावेगा, सोई परम पद पावेगा। जो भजे हरि को सदा, जो भजे हरि को सदा, जो भजे हरि को सदा, परम पद पावेगा, सोई परम पद पावेगा, सोई परम पद पावेगा। जो भजे हरि को सदा,